Okay, ladies, I'm so excited to announce our speaker this morning, Sarah Cox, on talking about setting age-appropriate expectations for our kiddos. Sarah has been married to her husband, Matt, for 18 years. She homeschools her 4 kiddos, ranging from 15 to 7. And fun fact, I used to watch their oldest 15-year-old girl when she was 4. It feels like forever ago. It goes so fast. They love to camp, hike, basically do anything outdoors. So please join me in giving Sarah a warm welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Happy Valentine's Day. Hope you're off to a good morning. Well, I grew up in a family of 4 kids, and when I was in college, my parents took some of us to Europe. While we were there, we'd never been to Europe before. We just arrived in London, and it was we rested, took naps, time to go out to dinner. And I take a shower. It was my sister's turn to take a shower. So she's getting in and turning on the water. And the water, she can't quite figure it out because, of course, it's different than what she's used to. She turns it on, and it's just so hot, super hot. And she starts getting kind of panicky. So she starts adjusting the different nozzles, and it starts going full force. And as she's doing this, she's going really fast now and turning anything. And she turns on the shower nozzle, which starts sending boiling water all over. And it's going so hard that it comes off the wall. The shower base comes off because it's like a hose thing, and starts spraying the entire bathroom with boiling hot water, full force. As it's doing that, it hits the light fixture and shatters the glass. The glass is broken. She is screaming, and I open the door, and she's hiding behind the toilet, just screaming as the water is flying everywhere. That sends the hotel managers some sort of message, some sort of alarm went off in their office that they come and they are knocking on our door, find out if we're okay. Of course, we explain everything, we tell them we're okay. But we kind of got to know them, which was good, because about 20 minutes later, we end up blowing 2 fuses as we're trying to dry our hair. They end up having to bring us more hair dryers. The whole situation was just incredible. I mean, parents were mortified, hiding under rocks at this point, cannot believe their 2 teenage daughters. But you know what? So much of motherhood has that similar feeling, like, I don't know what I'm doing right now, right? We are arriving in this uncharted water. We start with newborns and everything is unknown to us, and that feeling kind of continues because we keep entering new phases and we haven't walked through them before, and it's kind of overwhelming, right? So we need each other. We need moms. We need to be talking. We need to make connections so that it's all not so unknown to us. So this morning, we're going to spend the first part of our morning talking about how we can understand our children better, how we can understand their brains to begin with. So if you can write down point number 1 on your outline, understand your child's growing brain. Understand your child's growing brain. Now, I was a psychology major in college, and I'm sure some of you were maybe child development majors, something like that, but it's so different when you're learning just about anatomy. But when you're learning about your children who you love, and these things start to take meaning, and it pertains to this person who I care for every single day, it becomes a little more interesting. So hopefully this little science lecture will be a little bit more interesting as you think about your babies. So the first slide, if you can switch it to, is their brain. I'm sure you've seen all this many times, but the brain primarily is made up of 3 parts. You have the brain stem, you have their cerebellum, and then you have their cerebrum. So what you see in this picture is the cerebral cortex. That's just the top layer of the brain, made up of lots of gray matter and things like that. This is where most of the learning takes place, though, as they're in our home. But when our children are born, after about a year, their brain doubles in size. So much growing is happening. But by the time they're 3, their brain volume has grown so much that it's about 80% of adult volume. And by the time they're 6 years old, their brain is about 95% of adult volume. So much growing is happening during these first 5-6 years in our home. But their brain remains under construction for the entire time that they're in our home. I mean, through their mid-20s, their brain is still under construction. This front of the brain, the prefrontal cortex up in the front, is still developing until their mid-20s. And interestingly, that's the part that is in charge of decision-making and planning. So many researchers believe that teenagers, because this part is not developed, the planning, thinking through part, they use this other part of the brain called the amygdala, which is in charge of emotions, things like impulses and stuff like that. So they're relying on this other part of the brain to help them make their decisions. So they might not be making the most wise decisions, right? The decisions that you would make an adult, because they don't have the same brain like you do. For example, when I was in high school, we had a 2-car garage, and for some reason, no logical reason, I decided to turn my parents' minivan around without exiting the garage. So I was facing this way, and I just think it would be fun to turn it around and see if I can get it to go this way. About halfway, I got stuck. There's no sensors like we have now or backup cameras, and I'm just get my parents' car completely stuck. And my brother comes into the garage, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I don't know. There's no logical explanation for what I'm doing, right? So we need to be patient with our teenagers, but with our kids all through the growing years, because they don't think like you and I do. They don't process the same way that we do. We have to constantly be patient with them and understand that about them. But through it all, even though they're developing a lot in their teenage years, so much of that is happening when our kids are your kids' age, 0 to 5. That's when the majority is taking place. So how do they learn? We're going to watch a little YouTube video. Hopefully it'll cast some light.
A child's experiences during the earliest years of life have a lasting impact on the architecture of the developing brain. Genes provide the basic blueprint, but experiences shape the process that determines whether a child's brain will provide a strong or weak foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. During this important period of brain development, billions of brain cells called neurons send electrical signals to communicate with each other. These connections form circuits that become the basic foundation of brain architecture. Circuits and connections proliferate at a rapid pace and are reinforced through repeated use. Our experiences and environment dictate which circuits and connections get more use. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent. Meanwhile, connections that are used less fade away through a normal process called pruning. Well-used circuits create lightning-fast pathways for neural signals to travel across regions of the brain. Simple circuits form first, providing a foundation for more complex circuits to build on later. Through this process, neurons form strong circuits and connections for emotions, motor skills, behavioral control, logic, language, and memory during the early critical period of development. With repeated use, these circuits become more efficient and connect to other areas of the brain more rapidly. While they originate in specific areas of the brain, the circuits are interconnected. You can't have one type of skill without the others to support it. Like building a house, everything is connected, and what comes first forms a foundation for all that comes later.
So how important those early years are, right? It's building a foundation for everything that's coming later. So as the video talked about, neurons are passing messages at synapses. We have another slide to show you just a quick little picture of what this looks like at children's ages at various stages. So at a newborn, those are just pictures of how many synapses are occurring at a newborn brain. At about 1 month, obviously, more is happening. They're learning a lot more. At about 9 months, there's a lot more neural activity and neural connections that are happening. At 2 years of age, though, so much growth has occurred at this time. But this is what they talked about in the video. The pruning process starts happening later on, where the brain eliminates what is not needed. So during those early years, as they talked about, it's the blooming and then pruning. So they're blooming, they're getting so many more neural connections, and the more that we stimulate them, the more neural connections that they have. And then later on, the ones that are not connected as much get pruned away naturally in their brain. So it's actually quite interesting when you think about how that pertains to our children. what that looks like practically is in language. So say they're hearing words and they're associating with pictures and they hear the word dog again and again and again and again, and they can picture a dog and they know a dog, and then that neural connection is strong and that pathway is strong and they can make that association really easily and quickly. But words that they don't know as well and they hear maybe once or twice, those get eliminated later on. It grows to be so complex, and the human brain is so complex and amazing. There's actually more wiring that occurs in the human brain than all the computers in the world put together in their little brains. Your brain is able to simultaneously process more than millions of messages per second. It is calculating whether the floor will hold you up. If it's more like a bridge, then how you're going to walk on it. It's calculating your body, the temperature, if you're hot, if you're cold, and it's telling your body to sweat or get goosebumps, right? It's recognizing voices. I could play a Hollywood actor and you would probably know who it is right away just by the sound of their voice. It's learning sounds and colors, and it's doing all this without you even thinking about it. It's a very complex, amazing organ. The Bible teaches us that God created this brain, and God has created our children and their bodies. And God has designed us as moms to have a front row seat to the growth and creation that he has made and all the growth that goes on during their life. I know it's one of my favorite things about being mom, just being able to watch and observe and see and be awed about what is going on. I mean, starting with life, right? You think through one physical act caused this life to be born, but now has brain and neural activity and brain tissue and hearts and lungs and all this stuff. You watch that whole process happen. It's amazing. God's an amazing creator. He made them with a heart that pumps 2,000 of gallons of blood through their body every day. And if you were to line up all their blood vessels in a child's body, it would go 60,000 miles long. It could go around the world twice with the amount of blood vessels in their body that are weaved through their skin, pumping oxygen to all the various parts. It's quite amazing. He's given them a cooling system to naturally, when their body gets hot, to cool itself down by having millions of sweat glands just release when they need it. Even when they get fevers, germs can thrive at normal body temperatures. So even with I know sicknesses is such a pain, but you think through the amazingness of what a fever is. It's killing off the viruses that can't thrive. They don't thrive at higher temperatures. So your body has this natural system to fight off germs naturally by elevating its own core temperature to kill off what is going on inside. And even the teething process of babies, it's so hard for them and it's hard for us, but really the process is amazing for us as moms to watch. And you think through, they were born with no teeth. What a gift is that to us, right? When they're learning to nurse and everything like that. They're born with no teeth. But right around the time that they're learning to talk and eat is when they start to get these little baby teeth, just proportionate to their small mouth. They couldn't talk without them. They wouldn't be able to chew without them. God gives them the ability to have these little teeth just the right size, but as their jaw grows and their mouth grows at the appropriate time, he causes those to fall out and have a natural adult-sized teeth come in. And you can think through how amazing this creator is who has made this life and done all these things. We as humans have come so far technologically. We can have a pump for our pool outside that keeps the water circulating. So if it wasn't running, our pool would be full of filth. It keeps the water running and filters out all the bad stuff. Our heart does that too. We have air conditioning and stuff in our home that keeps our houses at a nice temperature. Our bodies do that too, right? We have computers that are nothing compared to the human brain. So God has created these people with all this stuff inside them, causing them to be the way they are. It really is amazing. See, God made the world, and God made our children. That's what the Bible teaches. God made us. And because he made us, he has ownership of us. It's just like if I was a writer and I wrote a novel, I would have rights over the characters in my novel because I created it. As you're the owner and creator, you own the rights to those things. If I was a painter, I would have the right to paint it however I wanted. If I wanted to go all Bob Ross and paint a black line through it, I would have the freedom to do it because it's my painting, right? As the creator, you are also the owner, and as the owner, you have rights over it. God has rights over us. God's our owner, and he has rights over us. God created us also with the role of being moms to these lives that he's given us, to do what we can to help them to thrive and to grow and to love them and to nurture them. And he's given us these roles to care for them. So that leads us to point 2 on our outline: help your child's development. Help your child's brain development. We want to help them to grow and to thrive, right? We want those brains, we want to feed them, to stimulate them. How can we do that? Well, the main thing our children need primarily, real boiled down simple, is they need food, and they need sleep, they need to move and be active, and they need a warm, loving environment, right? In a nutshell. Food, we all know, we have to feed them all the time. They need food to grow. They need sleep. So much sleep, right? When they're a newborn, they need 14 to 17 hours of sleep. And when they're a toddler and preschooler, they need like 10 to 14 hours of sleep a day. That sleep is so essential for them, but primarily their clock rhythm being set, that we set them at consistent bedtime and wake time, is of utmost importance to them. It's good for their body clock. It's good for them to get the different sleep cycles that they need. So we as moms can help them by providing an environment where they can get all the sleep that they need. Their brain needs their sleep. So much happens during their brain during sleep. The brain restores, the brain processes, their heart needs rest. Their heart is restored and needs all of that during sleep. It's good for them beating germs. Studies have even shown that children who nap do better at memory-activated things later. So if they did study where they had children not nap for a week and children nap for a week, and those who napped had better memory of the things that they had learned before that. So providing our children with sufficient sleep is really important. The next thing they need is moving and being active. They actually need so much more movement, I think, than I was surprised to learn about. Babies, when they're born, newborns and infants, need about 30 minutes of physical activity. So as they grow and they need tummy time, that tummy time seems like not much is happening, but doctors recommend 30 minutes of that pulling, stretching, all that stuff where it doesn't look like much, but it is so important to them. And then preschoolers and toddlers, really, need about 2 to 3 hours of physical activity a day. 2 to 3 hours of that physical movement a day, one of which they recommend being intense physical movement and activity, right? It's what they need. It's going to help their brain grow and thrive, and their whole body, all their motor systems, and then their heart, all that stuff. Babies and children also need structured play. That's stuff organized by an adult, organized by you. It's going on walks, playing games, drawing, painting, anything like that. Playing cards, story time, but they also really need unstructured playtime during the day. Free time, time when they're just free to be, to imagine and discover at their own pace, at their own style, where they can dress up. You can provide them with lots of dress-up clothes. You have maybe a dress-up bin, or you keep old Halloween costumes, or collect dress-up bins and just provide that for them, get their memory going and their ability to pretend and all that creative juices going. Lots of time to explore indoor and explore outdoor. Exploring outdoor, I know, is one of my favorite things to do with my kids, just giving them time outside to explore dirt, to explore grass, explore trees, climb trees, going on nature walks where you're not hurried, but they're able to slowly jump in puddles or pick up bugs or those sort of things. Playing with water. Water is so good for our kids, sensory-wise. I know kids can sit there and play with it for hours, right? You can turn on the kitchen sink and they're just like mesmerized and playing with water. I work at a school where kids the other day, they were in 5th grade and they had this science experiment where it was just water between the bottles, and they were in study hall and I was just watching them go from the water from the one bottle to the water to the next bottle, and they were just going back and forth all for a long time. And you think, water, there's something about water that is so mesmerizing to kids, but studies and science show that it's good for math, it's good for science, it's good for their sensory, it's good for so much. So provide things for your kids to play with water. I mean, obviously a monitored bath or something like that, but playing at the sink, playing with spoons and colanders and all those sorts of things. Music is so good for them as well. Music on, or learning to make their own music, banging kitchen pots, or making their own rattles with beans inside cardstock paper. One thing they don't need, and no one recommends, and it's no surprise, is screen time, right? They don't need screen time. Actually, screen time is so detrimental to all of the stuff that we're talking about. Studies have shown that the more that children are on screen, it releases more dopamine. That is the pleasure-seeking area. So the more dopamine is released, the more pleasure they're getting, and it's on non-natural things. So we're giving them this, stimulating them at this level that is not natural. So they get used to life at this level, and they get depressed when it's not that. It's addictive. They want this thing, and they want it so much. But the rest of the world doesn't bring them as much pleasure because it's an unnatural level of addiction that they're forming. It's not good for them. Children also need interaction in a warm and loving environment. A warm and loving environment. That's just pretty much being a buddy by your side, right? Talking with them a lot. Picturing you doing life with these little ones by your side, interacting with them all the while. So it's nothing elaborate, just talking with them as you're eating, talking with them as you're bathing, singing with them, just doing life together with them. So that could look like things like making a grocery list. We need milk. We need bananas. And they are picturing each of these individual things in their brain as you're saying it. It seems like nothing to you, but it's causing them to think and it's causing them to recall. Cooking, just telling them what you're doing. Having them help you, just stir something or whatever, and talking to them while you're doing it is increasing their vocabulary, expanding their brain exercises. It's really good for them. Singing with them, doing nursery rhymes with them, the cadence of all those things is really good for them. Books, I know we think we need to read tons and tons of books, but they actually just need the same books again and again, right? Not as many. We don't need to go to the library and get a ton of books. Just reading the same books again and again and staring at the pictures and asking questions about the pictures and getting them to retell you back what's happening in the pictures of these stories that they're familiar with and that they love. It's also recommended that you reduce background noise, any background noise, because it just helps them to focus on the voices and the people around them as well. Another way we can help our child's development is having clear expectations in your home. That's point number 3. If you could write down, set clear expectations in your home. Be clear. So I know with my Europe example at the beginning, the reason that was so confusing for us is because we'd never been there before, right? But our kids have never been to these where they are before either. Life is really confusing to them. They've never experienced so much of this stuff before. It's all new to them. So it really helps them when we are clear of what's expected and what to do. So how do we know what to expect from them, right? Well, sometimes I can be tempted personally to look up some of those charts at that age that says what your kids should be doing at each age. Didn't want to do that this morning because I feel like that produces an automatic feeling of, I have already failed. I have not taught my children to make a salad by the time they're 6, right? My child has not memorized their social security card. It does that for me at least. So instead, we're going to talk about principles. We're going to talk about principles of what you can do, because children all grow and develop at different rates anyhow, right? So we want to figure out our own children and how we can push them to develop at their own individual rate as best we can, as we moms know best, right? So the principles we're going to talk about this morning in setting clear expectations is our goal. So the first principle is clear speech. Have clear speech in your home. Remembering they don't understand like you do. So instead of saying, clean it up, say something specific, like put your toys in the basket. Not phrases like knock it off. What does that mean? Knock it off, right? Speaking very literally to our young children. Not, can you put your shoes on? Yes, right? But put your shoes on, please. Those sorts of things. Clear speech. Principle number 2 is having clear moral standards. As we talked about, the things that get reinforced and the synapses that build strong are the ones that are repeated in our home, right? So we want to have clear expectations that we repeat and we repeat and we repeat, and they hear from us again and again. We need to be consistent, and it's best to start when they're young. Setting clear expectations of what we expect from them morally when they're young. I remember I was talking to a girlfriend, and she was telling me one of her biggest impacting moments is when another mentoring couple told them, if you let your toddlers yell at you now, they're going to be teenagers who yell at you later. Set the tone of how you want them to communicate to you now in your home, and set that throughout. Because really, if we let them scream, How are we going to stop them later? We have to set the standard at how they can talk to us. Set the standard of obedience, that we expect them to obey. And all the way through, hold that standard. We expect them to obey. And we expect them to obey the first time, right? We're really shooting ourselves in the foot when we count to 3. If we can teach them to obey at 1, why push it all the way to 3 or 10, right? It's just making it harder for ourselves. Why don't we teach all of them? They're eventually going to start scrambling at 10 to do it. Why not just set it at 1? Having clear standards of self-control, that they're not free to do whatever they want with their body. Teaching them that they have to control their bodies. They can't hit and do whatever it is that they want and touch anything they want. We have to teach them clearly what we expect of them to control themselves. And how we expect them to treat people. How do we expect them to treat people? Treat people kindly. Over and over and over again. Treating them that people matter. It matters how you treat them. And keeping that going all the way through the years in our home. The third principle we want to talk about this morning is having clear goals. Clear goals in our home. We want our kids to be capable adults, right? I know none of us want a 24-year-old who just lounges around all day and doesn't know how to vacuum or pick up their plates or anything like that, right? So we want capable kids, so we have to train them towards independence. We have to train them towards independence. We can do so much for them, and we do, right? And especially when they're little and we're born, we do everything for them. But we have to train ourselves away from that. We have to start training them to do things for themselves. I mean, I know if I was a child and I had someone who would run around and do everything for me, I would just keep letting that happen, right? That sounds like lovely, great, this person's gonna do everything for me. But we have to train them to do things for themselves. So what can they do for themselves? This is what you as a mom have to think through. Is something that they're doing right now something that they're able to do for themselves? Are they able to get dressed? And then train them to get dressed. Are they able to start learning how to put their shoes on themselves and train them to be independent in that way? Are they able to now buckle their car seat booster? I mean, that was a big difference for me. When you have lots of kids and you're running around, it takes forever to load in the car, right? But when you can train your kids to do their own car seat booster, everything gets going faster. And it's good for them. It's good for them to learn to be big. Train them to clear their plates from the table. Train them to learn how to hang up their backpacks themselves. So we are not doing everything for them, and they're learning to be independent and big kids. Another thing we want to train them is we want to train them that they're part of a team in our house, right? A teamwork mentality. That phrase, many hands make light work. Repeating those phrases again and again and again. Studies have shown that kids who help are more resilient and more compassionate, and they do better in school. So it's beneficial for them. Studies have also shown that when we help and do physical things with our hand, it also produces a chemical that helps against depression when we're working manually with our hands. So on so many levels, it's good for them. It's good for us. It's good for our homes to have helpers. We need to praise them a lot when we're training them to be helpers, because many times who we praise them to be is who they become. They want to keep being the person that we're praising them for, right? I know when my child recently, I was telling him what a hard worker he is at school. He's working so hard in school. Well, he loves that, and now he keeps wanting to be that hard worker, so he keeps wanting to be who I'm telling him who he is. My daughter, not long ago, I was sick, laying in bed, and she nicely brought me something sweet. And I was telling her how sweet it is and how kind it is that she's bringing me something when I'm not feeling good. Well, guess who keeps now wanting to check on me every an hour with flowers and cards? Because she keeps wanting to be that person that I'm praising her for, right? So our kids need lots of praise and encouragement that they're doing well at these things. So they can keep wanting to be that person who we're praising them to be. So we want to teach them to work around the house, starting with some of those morning routines of getting dressed when you know that they're capable of doing it. Starting making their bed when you know that they can fluff their pillow or pull up their blanket. Training them those things. Brushing their teeth. Brushing their hair. All those sort of morning routines. Household chores. Starting them, giving them a job of feeding the dog or watering the plants. And you, as the mom, know what they're capable of. So maybe something's new to them, and you can't just teach them as you know one time and they're going to get it. And just stay by their side for a week as they're learning this new chore that we're implementing. Knowing many times at this age, the chores that they do around the house are not going to benefit you very much at all. Like, you can give them jobs of dusting and you can give them jobs of spraying and cleaning the table. It's not really at this point about you. It's about them learning how to do the task. And as they get older, eventually it will be of benefit to you. But just keep that in mind. It's not going to be about you, but it's going to be about them and something that's for their good, learning to be a helper around the home. The last principle that I want to talk about today is coming from my mom heart. Clearly embrace childhood. Clearly embrace childhood. I know with a lot of what we've talked about this morning, there's a lot of independence and maturity and all these things which are so good, which we really want the flavor of our home to be, right? We really know that they thrive best in schedules. They thrive in working hard. They thrive in all these things. But at the same time, we have to keep ourselves in balance. We have to let kids be kids. So we can't be too intense about all this stuff, right? Bedtimes are so important. But every once in a while, let them stay up, cuddle with you, stay up late with a chocolate chip cookie, right? Whatever it is. Chores and morning routine, absolutely. But declare it's pajama day and let everyone lay around and have fun in their pajamas. Let them get their hands dirty, even though you don't love that. Let them get their hands dirty. I look back at some of my pictures, and the ones that make me smile the most are the ones where my kids are, covered in filth and smiling from head to toe because they've just played in some giant mud thing. Those are the things as moms that we look back, and those days are the best days, right? The other stuff is important. Yes, so important. But letting them do the things that get them filthy dirty, splashing in puddles, and they're getting all wet. Declare rain days, days that you stay at home, so your children have a chance to just play in the rain. Not all the time, but sometimes just exposing them to that feeling of enjoyment of the water in the rain, splashing and getting soaking wet, and then warm up in a bath and give them hot chocolate. Interestingly, hot chocolate is one of those things that Americans look back, 70% remember hot chocolate from their childhood as being one of their highlights, right? So just having rainy days with hot chocolate. Letting them swim in a lake with their clothes on, climbing trees, whatever it is, let them explore. Give them lots of time for those enjoyable moments as moms and as kids. And the more we're enjoying them, the more better our relationship's going to be, right? We have to have that balance of goals, but giving ourselves time to enjoy them and enjoy us and build that relationship. So one of my favorite sayings as a mom is the days are long and the years are short, right? And we all know it, but yet how true this speaks to all of us. So let's make the most of these days, right? Let's make the most of these long days with them because we know it flies by. Give them lots of opportunity to grow and to learn and provide that environment for them, but also balance it out with lots of love and lots of exploring. Thank you very much. Have a good discussion.